Hi, everyone. My name is Meredith Holborn. I am a technical account manager at AWS. I'm just curious, anybody in the room know what a technical account manager does? Some of you on enterprise support, maybe? Okay. So just a little bit about me and my role. So I've been with AWS for about 3 years. My tech career goes back about 15, and it started in Canada, so I'll just address the accent right away. I've been here at AWS for about 3 years. I've been working with UK public sector customers for the most part, and helping them build their cloud environments, a lot of migrations from on-premise, and that sort of thing. But what technical account managers really specialize in is operations. And part of that is cost optimization. We don't want you spending your money that you don't need to be spending. I will use the term waste probably a few times. It's a little bit of a harsh term, but the reality is if you don't need to be running it, you shouldn't be running it and you shouldn't be paying for it. So the topic today is going to be a little bit about cloud financial management, how to build a bit of a cost-aware culture within your organization, and how these suite of dashboards, so there's 6 of them in total that are part of this framework, how these dashboards can help you and your business identify some of those cost optimization areas, and then track your progress and see the impact. So customers have been asking us any combination of these questions that you'll see on the screen for years. You know, how can we create this cost-aware culture? How can we get our builders, our engineers, being a little bit more responsible when it comes to running their workloads? And with these dashboards, what we intend to do is highlight some of the overspend. When you see it, it is harder to ignore. So the first step of any process that you're going to look at, you have to see it before you can do anything about it. We talked about this a little bit earlier. You have to see the data, you have to clean up the data before it can work for you. So same thing goes with your cost and usage data in AWS. And that cost and usage report is the data set that we use for the majority of these dashboards. Cloud adoption journeys. What does good look like and what should you be aiming for? So whether you're moving to the cloud for the first time or you're already established, this visualization is what a good cloud journey looks like. And whatever you're building in AWS, you should be continuously optimizing on your costs, but also your performance, your fault tolerance, resiliency, all of those things. Refer to our well-architected framework a little bit as far as what you should be striving for. So typically the question that comes up when we talk about these cloud adoption journeys and when we start talking about cost optimization in particular is, how do I spend less money on AWS? And the simple answer, the dad joke, if you will, just use it less. But that's not really the reality, right? When customers are coming to us and talking to us about how do we optimize our costs, it's because they want to grow. And they want to make sure that they are using all of their funds in the right way. So while that is what a good cloud adoption journey looks like, this is a similar view, but shown in a slightly different way. And this is trying to highlight some of the ways that you can cost optimize within your environments. So there's sort of a natural progression, but I just want to say that it doesn't always look this smooth. In fact, probably rarely looks this smooth, that you do things in sort of the logical order. There's a couple of things, and I can't actually see my own visual. It's too small on my screen. But along the bottom, we've got sort of the strategies, if you will, around cost optimization. So starting on the left, everything on premise is obviously going to cost you the most. But the idea is that we increase our usage, decrease our cost. So with the strategies along the bottom, there's things like instance right-sizing, and then there's things like choosing your correct pricing model. So that refers to AWS's savings plans and reserved instances. it doesn't really make sense to commit to a savings plan or a reserved instance unless you've already looked at your right sizing. Because then you might be in a position where you've overcommitted in your spend, and then you come back later and you decide to optimize your certain EC2 instances, you've resized some Elasticache clusters, but you've already committed to a certain amount of hourly spend to us for a certain term, and now you might find yourself in a worse position. So there are a few of these strategies that should be done in a certain order, but I'm also a fan of bias for action, and if there is something that you can do, something you can action here yourself, go ahead and do it. So what are the Cloud Intelligence dashboards? These are a suite of dashboards that have been built by a group of TAMs based in Europe for the most part. And we are a passionate group, so I'm part of the core team that supports these dashboards. They are not an official AWS solution, so I will say that right here. We have several blogs on the topic. I just published one on our Trusted Advisor organizational dashboard. So if you just search for these Cloud Intelligence dashboards through the AWS blogs, you'll see lots of details about them, also some customer stories about how they've used these to improve their own business. So really what these are is a framework, and it's a way to visualize data from your AWS spend. So I talked about the cost and usage report. That's kind of the main data set of most of the reports, most of the dashboards, but there are a couple of other data sets around Trusted Advisor and the Compute Optimizer tool, if you've heard of that. So some key things about these dashboards: you own the resources. These run inside your AWS account. This is something that you deploy, you control, and it is serverless, so it's pay-as-you-go type of cost associated with it. So because we're talking about cost optimization, I have to make sure I address the cost of these dashboards. They are not free. They do use AWS services. So your Athena queries that are running, your S3 bucket that's storing your reports, the QuickSight licensing. So on the cost optimization point, the user licensing on QuickSight is the piece that's the most expensive. So you need to make sure you're managing your users. Not everybody needs to be an author, and not everybody needs full access to QuickSight, so keeping that in mind. We've got some rough calculations of what the costs could look like. The deployments are all in our well-architected labs, if you guys have heard of them, wellarchitectedlabs.com, and there's some FAQs in there that break down some of the costs. But basically, a couple $100 a month, unless you're a massive organization with loads of data and loads of AWS accounts. So very, very cost effective. We created these dashboards because we saw a need for them. We have, there are third parties out there that also provide these kinds of services, and they do it really well. And we're not at that point yet, but this is what they do full time. So they are not necessarily like for like. You'll probably find that there's some things that we provide that they don't, and vice versa, but we are very cost effective, and that's one of the big feedbacks we get from customers, is that just being able to save $3,000 a month on your costs for those dashboards and that insight into your data is worth it for them. So I'll only talk for a couple more minutes, and then I'm going to jump into a demo, because I know those are a lot more interesting. We want to see the dashboards. So just to touch on the 6 dashboards that we have, there are a range of audiences for these dashboards. So I'm actually just going to skip right through to the next slide, where we kind of highlight who is going to benefit from each of these dashboards. So across the top, we've got them, the dashboards listed and their uses, and below that, typically who is going to access them and who's going to benefit from them most. So CFO, CIO, people doing high-level chargebacks and just kind of getting a 3,000-foot view of spend, they're going to be the dashboards on the left, the trends dashboard and the cost intelligence. Then as we move over to the right, the Kudos dashboard and the KPI dashboard get a lot more granular. And we also have different needs for those people typically. So again, it's what are they interested in seeing? So some folks choose to deploy the cost intelligence dashboard first. It's kind of in the middle there somewhere. It's high level enough for the execs and granular enough for some of the FinOps people, engineering and DevOps that are looking at this a bit more closely. Kudos is my favorite dashboard, and we'll talk about that a little bit in the demos, but it can be a little bit overwhelming. I will also raise my hand to say that. There's 20 sheets, there's over 200 visuals. Sometimes you just look at a graph and go, what is this telling me? Why do I care about this? So the cost intelligence dashboard is a really great introduction into the types of things you can take away from this suite. Yes, the framework itself. So when we deploy this, it's through a CloudFormation template. There's also a command line tool that you can deploy. Doing it through Cloud Shell makes it super easy. It's a public repo. Cloud Shell, you're already authenticated. Type out a couple of commands and you can have this deployed in about 15 minutes. What it looks like under the covers. It is a framework, so there's some foundational things that get built, mostly around your cost and usage report. So some SQL queries from Athena that are calling your cost and usage report, just again to clean up that data a little bit. I don't know if anybody, actually raise of hands, has anybody looked at a cost and usage report in detail before? Okay, so you know they're not human readable. You can gain data from them, definitely, but if I needed to actually quickly decipher something, I'm not gonna do it looking at the raw data. So we clean it up a little bit. We apply some pretty labels to some of the fields, but we also leverage a couple other services and their data sets. So there's the Trusted Advisor reports, which are gonna show you some cost optimization areas, some performance areas. We'll get into a demo of that, so we'll see all the areas that the Trusted Advisor dashboard covers. And then Compute Optimizer as well has got its own dashboard, and it is powered solely by that Compute Optimizer report. So quick one on the high-level diagram of a recommended deployment architecture. So again, I mentioned this is a CloudFormation template, so the 1, 2, and 3 that you see there is 3 separate templates. They run across 2 different accounts. So again, this is a best practice type of suggestion that you should deploy your dashboards inside of a governance account or a cost optimization account, something that is not your main payer. Part of the reason we suggest that is a lot of times customers will buy their savings plans from their payer account, and they will share their savings plans with all of their other accounts. But if you have workloads running in your payer, they actually get priority on the savings plans. So, we don't have a lot of compute usage happening here in these dashboards, but it's just something that, again, it's an AWS best practice. Don't run workloads in your payer. So first template is to deploy an S3 bucket inside your governance account. Second one is to create a cost and usage report and an S3 bucket for it, and a replication rule in your payer account. So effectively, cost and usage goes into the bucket there, and then everything just gets copied over to the source bucket that we've created in the governance account in that first template. And then the third template is the fun bit. It's all the dashboards that get deployed. So we're deploying a glue crawler in the background. There's a couple of Lambda functions, and then the QuickSight data sets and templates to show you your dashboards. Okay, so I'm gonna not go through each individual slide and talk about what all the dashboards do. I'm just gonna hop over to a demo. So just bear with me while I duplicate my screens again. And pull up our dashboards. So I do have a couple QR codes at the end here, but also feel free to come and talk to me. This is a public demo, so you are able to go to it, have a play around with it, apply some filters, look at a few things. Also, maybe talk to your management about it if it's something that they might be interested in. That's my goal today. I would love for somebody to be able to walk away from here tonight and go to their management and say, I heard about these dashboards, let me lead this project, I want to own it, and then bring that to their management to show them some of the ways that we might be able to optimize. So that's my goal here. So I'll just go through, whoops, that was the wrong one. I'll go through the dashboards kind of in the level of granularity. And the trends dashboard is one that, to be honest with you, I don't look at a whole lot. It's also got some unfortunate default date ranges that mean there's no data in there when I open it. There we go. So again, this is a very high-level exec type of dashboard. The insights that you're going to gain are built right in. This is all dummy data. It's not real customer data. Sometimes it's not the best illustration of what these dashboards might provide. So again, another really appealing reason for you guys to deploy these and have a look and see what it might find for you. Right, so one of the things I really like is the service heat map on this dashboard. So again, we've got some date ranges that are in the past, but that's okay because we can still see the data. So it just sort of highlights what services are spending the most each month. Very quick, easy way to just glance at it and maybe spot an anomaly, right? Maybe you didn't expect that AWS Shield should be costing the most each month. Or maybe there's a particular month that you thought there was a workload migration that should have removed some costs, and all of a sudden you see high spend in those months. So I'll pop over now to the CID. So this is the original dashboard of this framework. So this one is the cost intelligence dashboard. The whole framework is called Cloud Intelligence Dashboard. So both CID, but not to be confused with each other. So billing summary here, we get, again, sort of an executive overview of the invoiced spend versus amortized spend. So the difference between those two is if you've made any upfront commitments and you've spent a bunch of money in 1 month, the amortized view is going to spread that cost over the life of the term. The invoiced is going to show that big spike for that month. We can see some forecasting that's been built in here. So again, this is dummy data. It's not great for forecasting things. It's not going to be accurate. But again, this is why you should deploy it and have a look and see what it thinks. So I'll hop over to the cost summary. A couple of cool things in here. So if anybody is not familiar with QuickSight, I don't know if I've actually mentioned QuickSight yet, but QuickSight is a service that's powering these dashboards. This is Amazon's business intelligence service. So you can kind of relate it a little bit to Power BI or something like Tableau. The built-in functionality of the dashboard. So we've got some filters that we can apply to visuals. I can decide that instead of just looking at the previous month, or no, that's a terrible that's a terrible option. Let me see. What filter can I apply to this one? Let's say I want to, okay, I'm going to apply another charge type filter. And I'm going to say, I don't want to see my credits. Oh, I don't have any credits. I don't want to see my bundled discounts or my discounted usage. Okay, so then it filters my view down. The other thing that we can do with these is there's also sort of a drill down, drill up functionality. And again, this is all the template out of the box. So I just want to remind you all, so much customization opportunity available here. If this visual doesn't mean anything to you, you can delete it. We won't be offended. So RIs and SPs summary. This is really cool because it lets us track when reserved instances or savings plans are expiring. And that can make sure that we're ahead of any gaps that might happen. So I've unfortunately got a customer who just put themselves in this situation because they didn't have the visibility of their savings plan coming up to expire. So it expired in mid-February, and they didn't notice until the invoices came out end of February. And then they quickly purchased another one to fill the gap. But now all of their visuals look very spiky when it comes to the purchase type. So it switches from on-demand to savings plan and then back over to savings plan. So CID, we move on to Kudos. So this is my comfort zone dashboard. So you'll probably get a little bit more interesting demo from this one. So Kudos does stand for something, but for the life of me, I can never remember it. It's something about customer usage, dashboard, something something, or operational something. Maybe the S stands for something, who knows? So on this first tab, again, we've got very similar high-level overview to the cost intelligence dashboards, the invoiced versus amortized. We can also see that same data broken down by product or service. So if I want to see, where is all my money going? Oh, I have a massive spike in RDS this month that I didn't expect. One of my engineers decided to go spin up a few tests and didn't tell anybody and didn't clean up after themselves. Something like that. We also track your discounts and credits. So that's a really nice visual to see how much, so I see how much I'm spending, and now I also see how much I'm saving. And a quick view of which are your top spending accounts. So again, the idea here is super easy to identify a spike or an anomaly, and then go dig into that to find out what happened there. I'm going to show you the month-over-month trend. This is one of my favorite sheets in the dashboard. Again, I really love so low-hanging fruit is one of my big things. If it's really low effort for me to do and is going to have an impact, I'm a lot more likely to do it. But also easy spotting of those anomalies. So these top movers by product and by account make it really easy for you to see, oh, again, all of a sudden there's this development account or a pre-production that's not supposed to have anything changing in it for the next 3 weeks due to our sprint timing, but all of a sudden there's $3,000 more. That's something that you can identify super easy just by glancing at this list and then go dig in to find out why that happened. So similarly, we've got this table which shows the service and the month-over-month spend for the last 3 months. So you can do stuff like, now I always get this part of the demo wrong, so let's see if I can do it properly. No, I don't want, is it percent? Yes. So I want to see the stuff that's moving the most. And again, sometimes 100% is 3 cents, because maybe you were on free tier before and now you've just tipped over to a couple of cents of spend. So you have to keep in mind that these percents aren't always relative. So maybe you want to sort it by the dollar amount. What's moved the most as far as dollars go? So I've identified, what is this? This is Amazon OpenSearch. Has spiked up 100% this month, or last month. Why is that? I'm going to click on this, and now it's filtered all of the other visuals on my sheet to show me just the details about OpenSearch. So now I can see these 2 accounts are responsible for that increase in spend. And actually, this one decreased in spend, so I don't need to, is that right? That looks a little funny to me. Live demos. But the idea here is that you can then go, okay, I see a subset of accounts, I'm gonna go have a word with them, find out what's going on. Maybe there's a project that's not on track. There's lots of reasons for why these anomalies are here. But again, if you don't see it, you don't know it's happening. Quick one on compute. So compute, obviously one of the bigger AWS areas. And we have a lot of cost optimization around EC2 instances and the compute services in particular. So I've talked a lot about savings plans. I'm a big fan. If anybody out there doesn't have a savings plan yet, please go buy a savings plan. You will save money regardless, unless you haven't right-sized yet. So what we can do here is we can see the breakdown of our spend. So how much of our usage is actually covered by a savings plan? How much is covered by on-demand? And then we can make an educated decision to go purchase a little bit more of a commitment to increase the coverage of our savings plan. And we always want to make sure that we're using all of our savings plan as well. So as far as utilization of your savings plan, there's these really nice graphics here that show you, so in this case, we overcommitted a little bit. We had some wasted spend here that we didn't need to have. How am I for time? Okay. I won't go on too much longer. There's a couple more things I want to show you because I really like them, and then I'll give you guys a few minutes for some questions. if there are any. So Optics Explorer. So if, for some reason, in the 15 other sheets, you didn't see what you're looking for, I introduce you to the Optics Explorer, which is essentially just a whole bunch of filters. And services that maybe don't have a pre-baked visual, so something like QuickSight itself. We don't have any visuals that are specifically breaking down your QuickSight spend. So maybe I want to build my own visual around QuickSight spend. So I'm going to apply some filters here. I'm going to look for QuickSight. I know there's definitely QuickSight spend in this account, or in these accounts. And then, maybe I want to filter by region as well, and I only want to look at the EU regions, which is not going to show me anything because we almost always deploy in US East 1. And then maybe there's a couple of accounts that, they have their own budget, so we don't care what their spend is. So I'm going to deselect a couple of them. Okay, so now I've got a nice custom sheet that shows me insights into my QuickSight spend. This sand key diagram visual is just really fun, super cool, because it shows you sort of again, I'm all about easy visualization, and this is really obvious to me that this account is the biggest spender of QuickSight. I don't have to do any more digging to answer that question. So you can take these visuals as they've been sort of pre-populated for you, and you can duplicate them to another sheet, and you can build yourself a bunch of custom visuals. And you'll do all that inside the QuickSight service under an analysis. Okay, so then there's 3 more dashboards, guys. So I'm gonna try and be quick about these ones, but they're all just very exciting to me, so bear with me. So KPI tracker, key performance indicators. This dashboard has got 18 KPIs that we think are important for cost optimization. And these dashboards allow you to track your progress against those KPIs. So we've got things like S3 standard goals. We want to have less than 65% of our storage costs in S3 being standard tier. Standard tier is the most expensive. We want to be trying to make sure we're archiving, we're using cold storage where possible. Then there's a lot of modernization things on here as well. So GP2 to GP3, let's say we want to have 50% of all of our EBS volumes out there are going to be GP3. If you didn't know, GP2 to GP3 is a very, very simple cost optimization effort. You probably don't need to change anything. You're going to get like for like, and you're going to save no matter what. There's better performance, and it's a better price point than GP2. So we can use these things. So we set our KPI goals. So again, we've made some assumptions by default because we have to, but you can modify these as much as you like. So if we dig into EC2, we can look at some of the top opportunities by instance family. So again, we're going to see easily where is the spend that can be addressed. So I can apply some of these filters, to T3, and again, that's going to then focus all of my other visuals on just that. So it's easy to drill down. The potential savings chart here, pivot table. This is Graviton versus AMD versus Intel. And again, this is just going to let you track everything. Oh, that's normal that's empty. Sorry, had a moment there. But KPI dashboards, again, I don't use these ones as often, but there are a lot of our customers out there who use them mostly on this tracker page to just see what's happening. So you have these projects internally, you've got teams that are responsible for doing some of these modernization efforts, and now you can see if they're on track. Trusted Advisor, organizational dashboard. So again, one of my faves, just wrote a blog on it, and it's really talking about how you can use this dashboard to address some of the things in Trusted Advisor. But the biggest thing is really the accessibility of this data. So the big thing here is you can deploy this dashboard, multiple AWS organizations, multiple payers. Instead of having to go into the console and download the report or look at every individual account and see which things have been flagged, consolidate everything into one view and then do your filtering from there. So again, a summary page, as per usual, that's going to just highlight those flags that have been, or the checks that have been flagged as problematic. And it breaks it down by the different areas of Trusted Advisor. So we've got the security, fault tolerance, cost optimization, performance, and then your service limits or service quotas. We've also just added a couple of integrations with Security Hub and also well-architected reviews. So if you go and perform a well-architected review, you complete everything, it identifies your high-risk items, it then brings it into this dashboard for you. So again, you can see the progress. We can see that there were 12 high-risk items identified, one of them has been resolved, and we had 13 of the questions that we didn't even address at all. So again, it's the single pane of glass or the consolidation of the data that's the big benefit here. So I'll just pop into the cost optimization. So of course it covers fault tolerance, performance, security, really important aspects, but I'm here talking about cost optimization. So the quick win things from here is looking at these tables and identifying the big things. It's pretty basic, but it's also very effective. So again, you can do filtering, you can sort, you can choose to, let's see, if I want to get rid of all my multi-AZs, because the chances are if it's not multi-AZ, it's probably, actually, now that I'm saying it out loud, I want to do the opposite. I want to see any accounts that are multi-AZ, that are not multi-AZ, because they're probably development or testing, and I want to see what are the big spenders there. So I'm going to just change this. So then I can identify these couple of accounts and these specific resources. I'll just get that filter thing out of the way there. And then I can choose to sort by what's costing me the most. And if I only have 10 minutes to address something, and I can go and talk to the developer who owns that account and say, hey, can you just spin down that resource for me? I've saved some money. Then we go down into the low utilization EC2 instances. So these are your underutilized EC2 instances, how much they're costing you, how long they have been deemed as underutilized. And then also, this is showing us when it was first identified and when the last time it was. So if you see a resource in here that's got a long gap in between those two dates, that's been costing you a lot of money unnecessarily for some time, potentially. A couple more on this screen. So EBS volumes, underutilized EBS volumes. A good way to look at these is see if any of these are attached to an instance. If they're unattached to an instance and they're underutilized, they're probably orphaned resources, and then you probably don't need them. Idle load balancers is another good one. So the reason for the idle load balancer is something that I choose to filter on quite a bit. So if there are no active backend instances, that means that this load balancer is just there and there's nothing attached to it and it's never going to do anything, so why am I spending money on it? If there's no healthy backend instances, that could potentially be a problem with the workload or the instance, and maybe there's a problem that you need to address. So maybe it's not a cost optimization thing, but maybe you've now just identified a problem in a workload that maybe is not used very much and nobody has noticed yet. So you can find other things in the cost optimization section. And then these ones are pretty self-explanatory, and I know we don't have any data in the Lambda functions one. Unassociated elastic IPs is very similar to idle load balancers. If you have, well, not purchased, but if you have, what's the word I'm looking for? You've taken There's a better word out there, but I don't have it right now. You've taken, allocated an IP address for yourself and you're not using it, it's gonna cost you money. They don't cost you any money if you're using them. So it's not a lot of money. However, every little counts, as they say, and maybe, depending on the volume of these checks that have been flagged, it might actually be pretty impactful. You never know. Okay, last dashboard. So this one is the Compute Optimizer dashboard. And this, again, is built from your Compute Optimizer data. So this is a tool that's in the AWS console. If you didn't know about it, it does things to identify EBS volumes, EC2 instances, all your compute-related resources. Very similar to Trusted Advisor, where it's finding you're underutilized, but this also finds overutilized. And the whole idea here is it's supposed to help you choose the right instance, the right volume, those kinds of things, and identify them really easily. So if yes, let me go to the EC2 tab. So the first thing is, you might get a lot of results, and you might not want to wade through 9,000 of them. So I'm going to do something really simple here and just say, only show me the stuff that's going to save me at least $100 a month, because that's worth my time, I think. So now I've knocked it down a lot to only 800 resources. A couple of controls along the top let us change the way we're grouping these things. So right now everything's by account ID, but let's say I wanted to look at it by business unit. So this is a really common customization that customers will implement, is being able to group things by this business unit. And so from that, we can see that this fictional organization called Huff, Schwartz, and Young is the biggest culprit of findings around EC2. So then I can scroll down here and I can look at this table, which shows me every single of those 800 instances that it has identified for me. And then I can dig into some details there. Okay, so I want the hard hitters. I'm going to look at this one. So once we select a resource from the table, we get information about that resource. So this one shows that it's over-provisioned. And it shows it's over-provisioned by quite a bit. And it shows us that we can save quite a bit. But why? How does it know this? So if we scroll down a little bit further, we can actually see some of the metrics from these resources. So they are in the table as well, but you actually get the graphs shown to you here. So we can see that it's just over-provisioned. It's very simple. We don't need all the memory. We don't need all the compute power. We don't need all the network bandwidth. We can make this, what was it suggesting? A T3, I think? A T3 large would do us for only 12 cents an hour instead of $1.86 an hour. I can't do the percent math that quickly, but it's significant. Right, so I think that's it for my demos.